things we're dealing with are threats to humanity unlike anything the world has ever seen before.
We can bequeath our children a greener planet and a more prosperous future.
That's what climate change is about. It is literally, not figuratively, a clear and present danger.
If unprecedented changes are not made and made soon, there will be irreversible damage to the planet.
Zero carbon.
Eastall. Hello and welcome to Zerocarbonista Series 5, Just Stop the Tories. I'm Ian Collins and this is the #1 environment-based podcast that you need to be listening to. If it's green, it's in. And Dale, we've got a right Aladdin's cave of malarkey here this morning. I mean, this is beautiful. Can I start with a question?
Yes.
This comes from Michael Fabricant, who says, "Hi Dale, am I forgiven?"
Yeah, I love it.
This comes under the category of right-wing nut.
Yes, it does, doesn't it?
Tell the story first. What's the backdrop to all of this?
So the story is some right-wing nut called Guido Fawkes clipped a piece of video out of context of me talking about Hamas. Actually, not even talking about Hamas, talking about what's happening in Palestine. And a few Tory MPs picked it up and kind of repeated it on social media like they do, you know, and accused me of this, that, and the other, which was untrue, like they do. Fabricant was one of them. Tice is another one. And then I think there was one more. And the bloke himself, Guido Fawkes. And I said last time we were on air that we were sending legal letters to these people. And there's a kind of pattern of behavior here with the right-wing media. They say something that's wrong. They know that it's wrong. And then when you call them out, they make a small apology somewhere, which nobody sees. Well, Fabricant today is out on social media trying to do this in a way that nobody will see it, claiming that he's apologized, but he hasn't. He's just saying that he has. And he's removed his original tweet, which is all, you know, it's good progress, but it's not enough. But that's what's happened. Fabricant has said that he made a mistake and he has apologized, except I haven't seen an apology. I've just seen him talking about having done it.
Now, that's interesting, isn't it? So he's saying he's apologized, but so saying you've apologized and then posting that you've said you've apologized is not actually the same thing as apologizing.
No, actually, is it? It's not actually. But
I mean, if you didn't ever see the post, then you'd be none the wiser anyway. But even if you had, that doesn't constitute an email or a call to you to say, mate, I fucked up here.
Yeah, that's right. And it's been posted in a way that less people will see it. This is according to my social media team. It's like posted as a picture or something like that.
Yeah, it's a kind of screen grab of something he'd written.
Yeah,
because it doesn't jump out at first. You're absolutely right. But it takes me to the wider issue of why, I mean, particularly with Twitter or X or whatever they're calling it this week, with all of those areas, if you see something on there, something that's, you know, quite outrageous, as that comment would have been in the out of context quotation, you have to double check it. And usually it only takes a quick Google search to do that. It doesn't take much of time. I see the most outrageous things. And if things are outrageous, the rule of thumb is usually, well, that probably isn't true.
That's right.
And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to use the Google and I'll just check this and oh, look, no, it isn't true. Yeah. And it takes 10 seconds.
Yeah. I mean, two things here. One, I think, especially if you're an MP, right, you should be careful what you say on social media. Correct. Because you're being scrutinized all of the time. Second thing, I think these people don't actually care. I think, like the Mail and the Sunday Times and people that we've had to challenge recently, they'll put up a false claim. When you challenge them, they'll take it down. And that's okay, they think. But of course, the false claim itself has much more impact than the taking of it down. So we're not going to let that rest. Mickey's going to have to do better than that. Tice is next. We haven't heard from him yet. The letter only went out yesterday. I imagine he received it, pooed himself, and went straight on X and did whatever he did. But you've got a story.
Yes. And this is, this is just extraordinary. So a Tory MP called William Ragg has been caught in a kind of honey trap sext scandal. Because what happened, he essentially, I think through a gay dating app, decided what better way to try and entice somebody into the world of conservative love than send them a picture of your dick.
Oh.
So William Ragg decided that was the best course of action. I'll just send some photographs of my genitals to an unknown person. And then it got to the stage where the unknown person started asking for contact details of other MPs.
That's mad. That's just mad.
He suddenly realized, actually, I think I might be getting blackmailed here because I've sent pictures to somebody and so he gave details to this person of other MPs, including a minister, which is just such a stupid thing to do. And I understand. Apparently he panicked and thought, oh, my God, I've screwed up here. What am I to do? So I'll just give them some details. And then all those other MPs and people, they then got sent saucy or suggestive texts from people suggesting they knew them, as if it's somebody they used to work with, trying to get them into a kind of a sexual saucy conversation, hoping that they could, one would assume, ultimately, possibly, potentially extract some money from it. And it all started with Rag with his pants down while stroking Yoda behind the ears, apparently. So.
And this is how you described it to me just ahead of us doing this. You said MP caught wanking over his computer, and then you said, "Well, I am exaggerating slightly," and I'm like, "Well, then you'll have to do what the right wing does and backtrack slightly in a minute."
Yeah, and it is only slightly, really, because I mean that was probably involved there somewhere. I don't know. I don't want to upset Mr. I don't want a letter from Mr. Ragg's lawyers now saying you wrongly suggested my client was masturbating when all he was actually doing was taking photographs of his willy. Oh, silly me. Okay, I'll take that one to the courts, frankly, under the banner of fair
free
comment.
Speech. Fair comment, yeah. Oh, talking about that, actually, Reform, right, our favourite extremist right-wing party of the moment anyway, didn't they bar a couple of candidates this week and for being racist? And they said that the behavior fell below the standards of the Reform Party, which I thought was hilarious. I immediately conjured up images of a ridiculous limbo competition that only a snake could win, right? So
how
funny.
high is that bar? So we'll watch with interest because we've now got a little bit of a sort of a pseudo drama going on here. So we're waiting to hear from others as to whether they're going to apologise. What is it you're asking for? Are you allowed to say that, or is that confidential? Is it an apology? Is it a donation to something?
No, God, no. But just saying, like, you retract, right? Accept that what you said is wrong. I mean, I think in public is the important thing because it was done in public. So, I mean, it's not. We're not asking for the moon or anything like that, and certainly not money.
My favourite comment underneath Fabricant's alleged apology was, "Michael, you really are a bit of a."
That was your nan, right?
She can't keep away from social media, Dale. I keep telling her, that nan, don't tweet while you're pissed. It's the number one rule, but there we are.
Yeah.
Let's move on to, I thought this was an interesting story. I know you spotted this during the week as well. 57 companies linked to 80% of greenhouse gas emissions since 2016. So of all the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of companies out there, it's 57 of them that are linked to millions of companies that are linked to 80% of the emissions. This is kind of up there with the richest people polluting most of the air, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's just incredible. It's up there with like the 1% of people in the world do 50% of the flying. It's kind of that kind of statistic. It's all happened since Paris in 2016 as well. So since the Paris Accord, where the whole world said, yeah, we've got to keep emissions down, these guys have actually increased their emissions, and it's just 57 of them.
Yeah. 57. I mean, what do we take from this? I mean, is it good news in the sense that we know where they are and who they are? If it was 10 million and 57, we go, this is going to take us forever to find out who these f***s are. But there's 57. So they're in plain sight, as it were. I mean, we are looking at the Shells, the BPs, the Chevrons, these kind of characters.
And I think they're going to be liable to class action type lawsuits, to being held responsible actually for the gigatons of CO2 they've been dumping into the atmosphere in full knowledge of the impact that it has, in a kind of desperate attempt to make some money before the gig is up.
Indeed. Question from Lynn. Do you have any ponds at your solar parks? I was just reading that they could increase biodiversity. I guess the same for your windmill and gas mill sites.
Yeah, most of the sites that we have, we rent or lease from farmers. And with the wind site, for example, you take just 1% of the land within which the wind farm is based. And so farmers quite often carry on growing crops and stuff like that. With the solar farm, you take up much more land. And some farmers like to keep grazing sheep in between the rows of solar panels, not our favorite thing, of course, here. And others just let it go wild, which would be my favorite. But we haven't got any ponds that I'm aware of. We'd have to ask the farmers for permission to make them. It's a nice idea, actually.
Yeah, it's a good idea, isn't it? I mean, ponds are pretty darn crucial to the whole picture, aren't they?
Oh, aren't they? Yeah.
Who doesn't like a frog? It's as simple as that.
Nigel Farage.
We can always throw out that unbelievable stat that Nigel Farage is younger than Brad Pitt.
Is it true?
Yeah. And you look at the two of them together and you think, hang on, he is younger than... Really? Yeah. Wow. He's a baby compared to... Brad's about 63 or something.
Well, he's doing all right.
That surprises me in itself, yeah. But I'm sure he might have had a little enhancement here and there. If the lawyers are listening, he hasn't had any enhancements here and there. That's nicely covered.
Or you'll row back tomorrow. You row back in the next episode.
Absolutely. It's easy to... James says, do you think it's credible that there will be an October election partly to disenfranchise students? And how can students overcome this? I know you've been quite passionate about getting younger people out there voting.
Well, I do think it's possible. I don't know if it's intentionally focused on students. The Tories are doing a number of things to disenfranchise as many people as they possibly can, particularly younger people, students, minorities, all that kind of stuff, the people that don't vote Tory, basically. So this could be another trick in their arsenal. But I've been reading that there could even be a June election because Rishi Sunak is facing another leadership challenge. I mean, the Tories just do this like every few months, right? They're like, oh, well, this one didn't work. Let's get a new one.
Yeah.
And Rishi Sunak's response to them has been to say, look, if you do challenge me after the May elections, I'll just call a general election. The extent to which these guys are just like fighting each other should be funny. You know, it should be wonderful for everybody to the left of the Tory party, which is most people these days. But it isn't, of course, because they're doing great harm to our country in the meantime.
And it's interesting because, I mean, Rishi Sunak, it's like an episode of Roadrunner, isn't it? You know, when they come...
Roadkill is what
certainly with that Rwanda policy thing they keep banging on about, most Tories think it's a crock of shit and it isn't going to work and it's wrong on a number of levels. But the fact that he keeps coming back with yet another kind of, note, we're going to do this if we have to withdraw from the European Court of Human Rights and we're going to make this happen. And it's dead in the water. And even if, let's say he wanted to pull out of the European Court of Human Rights, by the time he found the time to go through all of the hurdles that would require, there'd be an election anyway and he'd be gone. And much like Roadrunner keeps coming back, or Coyote keeps coming back,
he's the coyote
to try nab the prize. It just escapes every single time.
Well, it's bonkers also because it's aimed at the people crossing the English Channel in small boats, and as we talked about in a previous episode, that is just 3.5% of net immigration into our country, 3.5%. And we've got this huge fuss that it's going to cost £1 million each to take one of these people to Rwanda, which is apparently a wonderful country, so wonderful that this serves as a great disincentive to people to risk their lives coming across the channel in a small boat. None of it makes any sense except in the warped world of conservative internal politics.
Yeah. What about British farmers then? British farmers want basic income to cope with post-Brexit struggles.
Bless them, right? I think it's 100 farmers, so it's not all of them, have signed a letter calling for a universal basic income, some kind of like benefits for farmers, although they're saying that actually they were basically kept afloat by EU subsidies, which of course we now don't have the benefit of because we did that wonderful thing called Brexit. At the same time, there's another report out saying that the EU spends 4 times as much money subsidizing animal farming as it does plant farming, which is bonkers. And one of the things we've talked about many times is how inefficient it is to feed plants to animals, to feed humans. You have these diminishing returns. They can be as many as a minus 10 to 1, 10 times more plants in than you get meat back out, in terms of weight, kilogram. And we need to reform the farming system, actually. So these poor farmers in our country don't have Brexit subsidies anymore. The new system the Tories dreamt up isn't working, and they're struggling. But the whole farming sector has been struggling for a long time anyway, and it's because we're basically fighting nature and we're fighting economics to feed plants, to animals, to feed humans. The whole thing is a nonsense.
Here's a question from Helen who says, other than working towards net zero, what is another important policy that Labour can deploy to get people feeling inspired?
I think reforming the tax system would be a good thing. I think a lot of people increasingly are feeling kind of put out by the way the tax system is prejudiced towards people with money. I think we might have a topic on the agenda about tax, but apart from net zero, I think some kind of fair tax system would be an inspiring thing.
Would you pay more tax?
Yeah, I think.
In fact, you joined the campaign, didn't you, to actually voluntarily say, look, I do all right, so I don't mind coughing up a bit more. And nothing happens with those campaigns, really, does it? Because if I was HMRC, I'd be going, this is fucking great.
Thank you very much.
I'd be ringing everybody up, going, thank you very much for your offer. Here's a sort code and here's an account number.
What it's about is taxing money made with money at the same rate as money made with a pair of hands. So if you work with a pair of hands, you've got one job, you pay income tax. And if you've got money and you let that money work for you, you have all kinds of tax relief, and you pay about half as much tax as income tax is.
Yeah.
And a new study out this week by a fellow called Richard Murphy reckons that there's 170 billion a year in the UK lost to this kind of tax bung to people that are already very wealthy. That's the kind of reform that I think we should pull off.
Yeah.
I think this week also we learned that the what are they called, the private equity business, they made £5 billion last year, and they have this special tax rule. It's not even a rule. We challenged this with the Good Law Project some months ago, and HMRC admitted that the rules don't allow what they do for these super rich people. There's about 3,000 of them, and they made £5 billion between them and paid half as much tax as they should have done, £600 million of missing tax. The rules don't allow that, but they've been told to interpret the rules by successive Tory chancellors in favour of this small group of very rich people. That's the kind of thing that we shouldn't allow.
And what's interesting is, I think windfall tax is another interesting one. And a lot of right-wingers will go, well, no, that's not fair, windfall tax. If you remember back in the day, Thatcher put a windfall tax on banks because she said it was because the interest rate changed. So the banks suddenly made shed loads more money than they would have done. And Thatcher's point was, hang on, you didn't make that money through some, amazing business acumen. You didn't make it because you had some great philosophy and introduced a new product. You made it because you were the recipients of a policy. So I'm going to tax you. And if Thatcher can do it, I don't know what some of today's right-wingers are thinking, because she surely is the totemic precedent for these kind of things, you might think.
For a whole bunch of them, it's true. And it does have strong parallels with the energy industry and the energy crisis we had. They made windfall profits, not because they'd done anything smart or done anything hard or anything like that. It's just because the global price of fossil fuels went up tenfold in many cases. These guys in the North Sea, for example, were suddenly getting 10 times more for the stuff they were producing than they did before. They made a shed load of money, and they never have been taxed properly. The windfall tax that Sunak eventually produced had 98% loopholes in it, exemptions for them if they reinvested in fossil fuels, the last thing we need. They could actually pay none of this windfall tax. But one of the changes we're recommending to Labour, because I think they'll be the next government, is to have a simple price cap on the North Sea. Don't allow it to follow the price of global fossil fuels. In the same way with retail electricity, we allow energy retailers to make a 2% profit margin above their costs. Do the same in the North Sea. Allow them a 2% profit margin or whatever it is they really need, but don't allow it to follow the global price of fossil fuels. And we can save £6 billion a year off of our energy bills. That's about 300 quid a household. And stop windfall taxes at source. There won't be any windfall taxes because there won't be any windfall profits.
There it is. And this does tie in, as you said, with the Richard Murphy report, which suggests that the wealth is undertaxed by 170 billion a year in the UK, and proposes tax reforms that could generate an additional 90 billion in annual tax revenue. So someone is thinking about it all.
Yeah, and he talks about aligning income tax with capital gains tax, which is the same thing I'm saying when I talk about money made with a pair of hands and money made with money. They shouldn't be different. I mean, the tax rules in our country are written for rich people by rich people, and I just think we have to change that. We should change that. It's not unfair to change that. It's simply fair.
Yeah. And a final question from Terry, and I like this because we have touched on this before. He says, what do you mean when you say that climate denial should be made illegal?
Yeah, I like this too, actually, because it's a chance to explain it again. So like Holocaust denial, right? That's illegal for various reasons. I don't know what the root of that is, but I don't think it's wrong that it's illegal. Climate denial, when it happens, and it happens all around us, is on right-wing media all of the time, denying that the climate is changing, or denying that it's man-made, or saying, actually, we need a longer transition and we can have whatever, all kinds of stuff. I say that should be illegal because it creates doubt where there is none. that doubt itself kind of detracts us from actually doing what we have to do. You know, it's dangerous because it's killing people. The climate crisis has already killed 4 million people globally, according to the UN. So if you're in the business now of climate denial, then you're actually harming people. And so I'm just saying, like, this is a Holocaust that's coming. And if we deny it now, then it's much more likely that it will happen, or will happen to a bigger, badder degree. And so climate denial just should be illegal, because the science is undeniable. And that's it, really. That's my case.
Well, it may well get put into place when the next government are in situ, which may be June, it could be July, August, September, it could be 3:30 in November. We don't know, but whenever it is, watch this space.
It'll be in 2024, though, right? We pretty much know
it's going to be this year, yeah. Exciting times. Trump gets not elected this year was one prediction I read today. Biden will just edge it, but who the hell knows? And then Rishi Sunak walks the plank and goes to live in Santa Monica.
He's definitely getting edged off the plank.
It's a tough old life when you're Rishi. Yeah. There it is. Dale, we'll speak next week.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Thanks, Ian.
That is it for this episode. Don't forget, of course, to follow this podcast. That way you get each new episode automatically. And, of course, Dale's on social media, twitter.com/DaleVince, facebook.com/DaleVince, and on TikTok too.
TikTok too, that's my favourite.
Zerocarbon.
East of.